Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and welcome to today's discussion with your balding bearded buddy as we are going to be taking a look at 3 different characters that I'm going to be playing during the upcoming Settlers of Kalgur League. I am stoked for this league. I think beyond comparison, this league is the league that I am most excited for in Path of Exile 1 over the last easily 3 years. Since 2020, since Delirium and since Heist's announcement, I want to say this has been the most excited I've been for a Path of Exile league. So I'm stoked. That means that I'm going to be playing a whole bunch of different builds on 3 different characters. I've got 8 different builds that are planned out to play over 3 different characters. That is, by the way, a wonderful solution to those of you who do not like leveling new characters. You can simply level a character and then switch their ascendancies to all sorts of different builds. That's a wonderful, wonderful trick that you can use. It's not even a trick, it's a feature of Path of Exile that's built right into the game. And of course, because respec points are available and plentiful and gold can also be used to respec, we've got lots of ways to be able to transfer and change up our characters to new builds that we want to as the league progresses. Whether you are a new viewer or a long-time observer of my lengthening, receding hairline, welcome. You can, of course, like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about future video discussions that are going to be slightly more bald than this one. In all my excitement for all of the things that are coming with Kalgur, including the Town Builder feature and including the currency exchange, I have not yet forgotten my roots. While this league is the most exciting league, I am going to stick with my most played and most beloved class and most played and most beloved archetype. One of the reasons why I'm league starting with a Necro is because it's one of the builds and one of the archetypes that I am most personally comfortable with in pivoting. If I have a good piece of gear drop, if I all of a sudden have some extra currency, I know exactly how I want to spend that in a league start environment in order to really get my build up and online and progressing quickly throughout the campaign and into maps. As I'll mention in a video that's coming out later on tomorrow, one of the keys to making sure that you have a successful and fun league experience is making sure that your league starter is something that you are confident in. And for me, I am confident in SRS and its host of abilities to pivot. So I'm going to league start with an SRS build. It'll start out as an LE-based build throughout the campaign. I might then transition it into a popcorn SRS or maybe even a poison SRS build as I progress through maps. Once I begin to accrue some currency and fill out my Atlas passive tree, then once I've got enough currency to accumulate the pieces needed, usually around level 95, maybe around level 90 or so at the earliest, that's if I get really lucky with a whole bunch of pieces, I will then switch over to a Holy Relic build. Holy Relic was my most played character during the previous league, and I've got to say it was probably the most fun build, I think. I don't think that's being hyperbolic. It was my most fun build that I've certainly played in the last 2 years of Path of Exile and maybe even the last 3 years of Path of Exile. It was awesome in terms of its damage. The survivability is not off the charts, but oftentimes you're off-screening with your damage and it feels and plays a little bit more like a Wander than it does like a minion build, and so it's great for doing all sorts of content that you can hit from a distance, which keeps your character for the most part safe and available for recovering from anything that's going to be a telegraphed attack coming at you. I'll then transition from Holy Relic after I've accrued enough currency to eventually be able to just splurge a bunch of currency on a Marionette Auto Bomber build. That build was awesome. I loved playing that about, 6 or 8 months ago, whenever that was, that we all played that back in 323. It was hilarious. It was enjoyable. It was just fun to watch. It brings like an AFK kind of minion-esque style of approach, almost like a Zoomancer, almost like a Spectre build. It is a Spectre build, right? But almost like the glory days of Spectre builds of old, but with a slight twist since everything's auto-targeting. It's almost like souped up extra DPS version of SRS, but in some ways it's not as much DPS because it's hit-based, it's not poison-based, so like there's no argument here. Like poison SRS hits the dot cap, and there's no way that the Marionette is hitting the damage cap. So it's not that it's necessarily a better build than Poison SRS, it's just fun, and I want to play it again, and it's going to be available again thanks to having the Spectres available again from Affliction League. After I've had my fun on my Witch, and once I feel like I've got enough leveling gear to be able to make the 10 Hex Story campaign be a breeze, I will then level up a Marauder character that will be a Jug in some way. I'm either going to do, it's really tough, I flipped this slide around a couple of times preparing for today's video. Either I'm going to do EQ to clear and try and make as big EQ earthquake, Michael Bay sort of slam explosion build as possible to just fill the screen with as much AoE as possible, or I will level with a Righteous Fire Chieftain that will then transition into the EQ clear Michael Bay-esque Transformers explosion everywhere sort of build. I have not run an EQ Jug for a long time. It's a build archetype that I loved way back in the day. It was really, really fun. I want to say, it's sad to say, that's like 7 or 8 years ago now, but it was really fun to leap slam into packs, earthquake, and then leap slam away and just watch everything explode behind you. It's that Michael Bay play style of Path of Exile where you jump in, everything explodes, fireworks, nuclear explosions going behind you, and then you jump off into the sunset. It's really fun, and I'm looking forward to trying it out. I probably will not go with the bleed version unless the bleed version I can fit more area of effect into a bleed version. If that's the case, then great. Then I will ultimately go with the bleed version, but I'm leaning probably not. Righteous Fire was another build that I played up to level 95 last league, and it was fun just to mess around with a chieftain and have some pop effect and to have a decent amount of AoE damage while you're clearing tier 16 maps. It's not anything that I'm going to be playing and pushing into endgame tier 17s or taking down bosses. I'll do that with my Witch and with my Necro stuff, but it'll be fun just to kind of chill, run around, see things pop and explode, and every once in a while, maybe if I've got the currency, I'll splash on a 1000 HP combs because they're available again, so why not? But they're for sure going to be super chase items, but anyway, it'll be fun to chase. Once I'm done pretending I've got more muscles than bald spots, I'll swap from my Juggernaut Marauder Chieftain gameplay over to a Ranger onto a Pathfinder because melee is getting buffed. That means that I'm eventually going to do a Mamba Viper Strike build. Viper Strike back in the day was my melee build, which during my days of memeing that I don't play melee at all, that was a solid melee build that actually had good clear and incredibly deceptive layers of tankiness. It was tankier at the time. I forget which league I played it. Somebody can find the video and tell me when, but it was actually more tanky than any other build that I built at the time, including champions and Juggernaut characters that were emphasizing and focused just on defensive layers up the wazoo and sacrificing offensive numbers for that. But the Viper Strike Pathfinder that I actually built back in the day was actually more tanky and produced way more damage and also moved a heck of a lot faster in terms of clear and in terms of bossing than any of the other builds that I had made at that point in time or that I had followed. And so that was just a big eye-opening experience for me. So I'll want to do one of those this league, but that's only going to be after I switch on to that Ranger character and level using Poisonous Concoction, which is, even though it got hit in some ways, in terms of its late game, I'm not so worried about that because I'm just going to be leveling with the character on Poisonous Concoction and then swapping over to Mamba Viper Strike, and then also potentially Ron Array's Tornado of Poison, which looks really, really interesting. He's got some videos out about it. Again, everything's down below in the video description. It's fascinating in terms of the way how it auto-targets, which those of you who know me and know that I love SRS, I love everything that auto-targets, right? We've got a bunch of auto-targeting sorts of builds that we're talking about here today, right? EQ, while it's not auto-targeting, you hit in one spot and then it targets a massive screen, right? Righteous Fire, you don't really have to target, you just have to run around. Marionette Bomber, you just run around and let the specters blow things up. Holy Relic, okay, you target a general area and then guess what? The Holy Relic will actually explode in a nova at the nearest target to you. So a lot of the things that I play like to auto-target. It's just something that I enjoy about Path of Exile. It's something that I enjoy about a lot of games, probably because I have such terrible hand-eye coordination because I'm so geriatric and old. So while Tornado is not the fastest clearing skill, it does look like once you slap the right gear onto it, the poison damage that it puts out is pretty decent and can clear tier 17s, take down bosses, and ultimately take on all the endgame content that you'd want, albeit not at the fastest pace. So that's my plan for the league. I've got basically 8 different builds that I want to try out on 3 different characters. That's not even getting into any of the Guardian builds that I want to play, which there's a couple of Archmage builds that I probably should try out before Archmage gets, reworked and nerfed and exploded. Who knows? Like, it may actually come out to be a dominant force here this upcoming league. Melee, if Melee like just absolutely sinks and does terrible this league, then I think a lot of players will pivot over onto spellcasters, which might make GGG, instead of buffing melee, which has not been their typical trajectory, they might actually just bring out the nerf hammer onto spellcasters. So I don't know. It's kind of one of those scenarios where maybe spellcasters inadvertently will earn themselves a nerf this league. We'll find out. It all depends on how successful all the melee buffs are in terms of popularity and in terms of taking down content. But those are my 8 different builds that I want to try out on 3 different characters. I'd love to hear what you're planning on playing throughout this upcoming league. And as always, I hope the upcoming 325 Settlers of Kalgur League is the league. A Mirror of Calandra drops for you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.